and welcome to Horror Cinema Reviews. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
Today it's Frankenstein created woman. I couldn't resist that. I have to do it every time. But this time around, the first half of the movie is pretty much a courtroom drama. As we have, at the beginning, the revelation that Hans, because name Rolodex, Carl, Hans, and Paul. But Hans saw his dad die for murder, a crime which it's implied he did not commit, and it's really the burgomaster of the village who did. And it's very subtle. You have to actually be really paying attention to note that detail. And the burgomaster is fairly fidgety and twitchy and looks like a murderous maniac. Well, he acts like a murderous maniac. The actor is perfect.
I like that line when burgomaster asks Victor Frankenstein,
who says, like, as a psychologist, I've analyzed Hans and determined that he would not commit a crime. You could tell a murderer just by looking at him.
And then you have Frankenstein
who leans forward
looks at him in the eyes,
and smirks and says, "Yes, I can." And you have the burgomaster panicking,
looking away, panicking,
and turning to the judge for help. So it's obvious he's a murderer. Now, I just realized he's the one who committed the crime and framed it on Hans' dad years ago.
Very likely.
He's the sort who would do it. We also have... now, this time, Victor Frankenstein is meddling with souls as part of his experiments. And the thing is, he meddles with... Well, Hans loses the courtroom drama, gets his head chopped off, and of course, Christina commits suicide witnessing the crime. She has a red birthmark on her face, and the thing, rather like James II, James the Fiery Face from Scottish history. And the thing is, she is treated like a monster by the villagers and by her father, who despise her. And, because the thing is, her dad, three punks come into the bar and start tormenting and harassing her. Her dad forbids Hans, whom he hates, from protecting her. And when they go to beat her and whatnot, Hans tries to protect her, and the bartender goes out to go and fetch the police so they could arrest Hans and protect the nobleman who would want to beat his daughter.
When it should have been him sending his daughter to do that.
And fetch the police to protect them. Or, in case he feared that they'd chase after her, go fetch the police to stop the nobleman. But instead, and he even says, "I don't want your sort around her." And the funny thing is, Hans seems to be the only guy who likes her. He seems to treats her really well. He evidently loves her. And yet, the bartender just seems to hate him. But then again, he doesn't really try to protect his daughter, and he generally kind of treats her badly. And she states that he never took her any places or really told her stories or did anything like that or shared special moments with her. But she then insists, "But he does love me." But it sounds like she's trying to convince herself. But his behavior does not imply that he loves her. Heck, he even still continues to accept the three punks into his pub after she commits suicide over Hans. So after all of that, they drove his daughter to suicide. He continues life like nothing's changed. Dude did not love his daughter. That's wrong. But anyways, Frankenstein, seized by fury, rants and raves about the lack of justice, having, ever since he came there 6 months ago to live with Professor Hertz, or Dr. Hertz, an old friend of his, who seeks to redeem Frankenstein, and who's a little slow at times. Now, Frankenstein's hands aren't as good as they used to be, and he's aged, so, he's getting older. He does need some looking after, so him and Hertz agreed to look after each other, with Hans basically looking after the two of them. They're old men. Hertz looks like he's about 70. The professor looks like he's in his early 60s. They're going to start needing looking after. But then Christina They revived Christina as the souls of both Christina and Hans. They intended only to put Hans in her body, but the trouble is the souls get mixed up, and they get confused and call her Christina. And the thing is, she starts suffering from multiple personalities, and you have Hans, Christina, almost a third personality, all just fighting over each other for the body. And Christina then proceeds to murder two of the thugs, the noblemen. And but throughout the second half of the movie, you have both the professor and Hertz, who start treating her more like their daughter, with Hertz really being very affectionate, holding her hand and wanting to take her out picnicking, and even kissing her on the cheek, saying, "I love you, dear," and whatnot, and even like taking her aside, saying, "Okay, listen, the professor brought you back from the dead," and sitting her down and giving her that talk. But then in another scene, when they take her to see the guillotine to test her mental health and whatnot, it's Frankenstein who's holding her very tenderly, like she's his child, and who comforts her and says, there, it's all right," when she passes out. So the two men are really being, no offense, but this was supposed to be a scientific experiment on their part. But I think the real backlash and the problem for them is that they start to actually believe she's their family. And she's very sweet-natured with them. And you can see that a lot of Hans's love, because the thing is, Hans loved these two like they were his dads. And that's been transferred over to Christina, who initially she detested them and feared them when she was in her own, like before the deaths. It's confusing. But now, I think even Christina's side of the personality, when she's seen how tender they've been with her, has come to love them. And because the thing is, her own dad reviled her, but these two men, while they did give her plastic surgery, they keep treating her like, they even say, like, one of the Hertz, "Oh, you're a nice young lady," or you have Victor Frankenstein. "Now be a good lass and come fetch me when it's time for dinner. All right, dear?" Like, they're treating her like she's their baby. They don't let her do any of the manual labor, even though neither of them are really in any condition to be doing it. And the only thing they ask of her is that she helps out with the kitchen cleaning and the cooking, but they won't even let her do all of that. Like, I'm just saying, it's a little funny, because I know there's going to be people who might screech, "Well, misogyny," but actually, it's almost like they're trying to be the servants. But the thing is, like, the problem is, physically, you could see that they're not in good health to an extent. They're old. In Frankenstein's case, he's almost infirm. And yet they still insist on doing a lot of the work around the house on top of their scientific and medical work.
Yeah, because I've noticed that in this movie, unlike the other three, Frankenstein is not looking at her taking notes.
Well, he does it for one scene, but then he after that, you can see him in another scene right when the villagers come to break the window and try to harass him. He is taking notes. But he seems just to treat her like a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Like a daughter he's worried about.
Because the experiment in the beginning, yes, he's talking about
transferring souls, but he's mostly interested in experimenting on himself.
Mm-hmm.
Which he did at the beginning.
It's an aspect of medicine that is essentially acceptable today.
What, not to play around with souls.
Not to play around with souls, but conserving someone's
life for as long as possible. Yeah,
exactly.
But the thing here is, he is still playing with life and death when he shouldn't. Now, in this movie, it's been said by James Rolfe, the great angry video game nerd or Cinemasker head, that perhaps Frankenstein learns a moral lesson by the end of this movie, which I think even he's to some extent a splittist. And because at the end of this, he says, like, the next movie and this one seem really to be completely different. Like, they've taken different directions. And you can tell. I don't know. I'm not going to speak for him because, he's him, I'm me, and I don't know him. And yeah, like, I honestly, though, I really like this movie for the philosophical implications in a lot of cases. Heck, you even have the priest at the beginning was a jerk. Who, when Hans' dad, I'm gushing here. The Hans' dad sees his son. He's like, "Get that boy away from here! Get him away from here!" You're the priest. "Come here, boy." Wants him to see it. That priest is a monster. But the thing is, but then once he thinks he's gone, you have his dad. "Do it now." Wow. So the dad's ready to die, but the minute he sees his son with the guillotine about to come down, he tries to once again protect his son. But yeah. Mm-hmm. But the thing here is, when it comes time for the village police to figure out that, Hans, and they suspect the professor, they come to confront him, and Victor Frankenstein insists upon Christina's innocence. Then, when he's finally forced into a corner, admits that, yeah, there might be some guilt. Then he still tries to say, "No, you can't try her." When, yeah, I know the three thugs deserved to die, but she still committed murder. It was wrong. And the thing is, the sad thing here is there's no one who's completely innocent, but very few of the characters are pure evil in this movie, and most are trying to be good. They just fail along the way, rather like in the novel in a way. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, well, how do I put it? Victor, frustrated, races off, escapes the police, and goes to chase after Christina to stop her from committing the last murder. And when he reaches her, he tries to reach out to her and tells her, "Come away from there. Come, Christina. Don't." Because she's standing over a ledge, over a ravine that's next to the sea. And all she tells him is, "I'm sorry," and looks at him with utter remorse and guilt and even sympathy before she jumps to her doom and deliberately drowns herself. With Frankenstein looking down, at first in a bit of anger and then frustration, like confusion, as though he can't understand why she did it. Then just sheer pain. And as he walks away, his shoulders slumped. He looks like, even the last glance in his eyes, he's a broken man. I think that he has none of the old dreams of playing God left in him. And I think he will leave that village, along with Professor Hertz. I think the two of them will leave that village, but I don't know where they're going to go. I think they're broken. Mm-hmm. One correction. Klausenstadt, I think it is, the city from the previous movie. I think maybe one reason Victor Frankenstein came to love this Hans so quickly was the name Hans. And the fact that this Hans was looking for a father. And Frankenstein, remember, the previous movie, he had a friend that he came to love as his own son, Hans. So he kind of projected his love for the previous Hans onto this one. But then he genuinely came to love this Hans for the man himself. And Christina, I think that in some ways, Frankenstein should have had a daughter almost. In this movie, because he seems to operate better and more gently with this lady than he does any of his previous experiments. But I don't think he even tried to save her because of the experiment. He seems to genuinely have cared for her as though she were his own child. This includes in the manner in which he speaks. Because with his monsters, he was frequently rough with them in his manner of speaking, brooking no defiance, no hesitation from them, no mistakes. Here, he speaks very gently, despite sometimes his harsh words. Mm-hmm. Like, he speaks a bit harsh, but then there's an underlying gentleness to either his tone or his eyes. Mm-hmm. So it's a very nuanced job that Peter Cushing is doing, and this movie is very complex, but the first half is way too slow in my opinion.
Oh, same here.
But I actually kind of hope he's going to be reunited with the other Hans in this timeline, and basically him and Hertz can basically play grandpa to Hans's kids, because I think he's going to need taking care of emotionally after this movie.
Because
you can't help but sympathize with him.
It's hard to say that the Frankenstein in this movie is evil. In fact,
Yeah, he actually seems fairly good to an extent because he tries to speak out for Hans during the court trial, and he even seems shocked that they would try Hans. Then he seems disgusted and angered at the injustice. No, he's angry at the concept of people misapplying the law and doing evil and killing unjustly. No, think about that. Like, in the previous movies, he murdered unjustly. Now he's offended by it. Maybe he's come to regret his previous murders. Sorry if I theorized that.
And maybe the previous Hans did help give him perspective. Pardon me.
That headache of yours, huh?
Yeah. And how... Okay, I forgot my train of thought.
It's okay. It's such an... Like, if you look at the series as... So far, like, these 4 movies, as a continuous timeline, like almost a single movie, it is a very nuanced, complex set of characters that we're getting here in relationships. Yes, maybe the previous Hans gave him perspective, and even the previous female lead and then Christina, I would almost say the previous Hans, this Hans, and Christina especially, to a large extent, have helped redeem him. And it's interesting because we've seen him go from, in the first movie, villain, to the next movie, anti-villain, to anti-hero, to finally hero.
And
he has covered all 4 of those major roles. And yes, it was wrong of him to violate nature in every film. But in this movie, one could almost say his goal was to rescue 2 young souls and soulmates and try to give them a second chance at life and give them a better life. And he's even started to experiment upon himself rather than others, which he's become an old man who doesn't want to see young people suffer, which is fairly noble.
Because in the previous movies, a lot of those that were murdered were innocents. I mean, sure, there are the 3 boys in here.
Yes.
But in the first one, there's the old grandfather and the boy.
In the second movie, there's the young lady.
In the third movie,
there's, I don't think there's any innocent people who were really killed.
Yeah, that was the only one where...
Yeah. But here Christina and Hans were the innocent ones.
Because all that happened was was essentially a bar brawl.
Yeah. And then the 3 crooks came along, and yeah, the people used it as an excuse to murder Hans and Christina by extension. And I don't think Victor Frankenstein or Hertz are going to want to stay in that village. Because Hertz is a gentle old guy who just wants to redeem Victor Frankenstein. And I think that he's going to be heartbroken by Christina's death because he was very affectionate and seemed to really love her as a daughter. And I really think that maybe he's going to recover first of the 2. You know what I mean? Let's say they do find Hans. I really want that to be the continuation of this. Or the sequel. That's my headcanon almost. But I really think Hertz will recover first. But I think Victor, it's going to take him a bit longer to overcome this loss. Because while he tried to be distant and behave more grandly around his surrogate daughter and seemed to have difficulty expressing himself, he seemed to have cared almost more for her.
And one thing that, in hindsight, I noticed over these past 4 movies is that there's a lot of people who have skeletons in their closets. For example, a conversation that they have when they want to retrieve a body for Hans is like...
Oh yeah, the guard had apparently raped a young lady and impregnated her. And Hertz helped her abort the baby.
And Victor's like, I don't care. You know everyone in town. You've worked with them all as a doctor. You know all their dirty laundry.
Use it.
And that does imply that everyone in that town are no innocents. The
Yeah.
only innocent people there
are Hans and Christina.
Yeah, they've never committed a crime before.
Yeah, then the village dirtied them.
Mm-hmm.
Hertz has never committed a crime.
Yeah, Hertz as well.
Hertz seems to be the divine masculine in the village, like the gentle old man who wants to redeem everyone. I'd almost say a Christ-like figure in a way. But the thing is, he is so good, he does kind of help redeem Victor Frankenstein. But the thing is, at the same time, he does have a dark side. But what I like is that he tries to play the fool sometimes, but then, like, the cunning look he gives that one guard, I want the body for 1 hour. And the cunning and fierce look he gives him is just, wow. There's a... But a few times when when the doctor tries to order him around, the Baron tries to order him around, Hertz actually stands up to him. He's not, he does tell him, when the Baron says, get rid of them! You have him, they won't come out till you talk to them. They say they're going to burn the building down. Basically saying, well, I can't talk to them. They're not going to listen to me. You deal with them. And they almost sound like a married couple. And a few times when it comes to Christina, it's like, you can't push her too far. Well, we have to. It's like, okay, Mom, Dad, she'll be fine. I was reminded of almost a married couple. But they remind me also of, Timon and Pumbaa. They're best friends. But it's just... Hertz wants to redeem him.
And one can also argue...
And the actor who plays Hertz is perfect.
Is this a horror flick or a tragedy?
I think this is a tragedy, more than a horror.
Yeah.
If you watch it in that light, and as the final part in the 4-part movie franchise of the first 4 Hammer films, this is a tragedy. Mm-hmm. The previous movie... at the end, in the last 5 minutes, that's Frankenstein's final redemption. He's finally started to... Well, maybe not final redemption, but, he started to redeem himself. But now he's finally redeemed. He's finally learned that when he plays God, there are consequences. Yeah, and... Yeah, I love this movie. Let's rate this thing. How would you rate it?
3.1.
I'm going to say a 3.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it as much as the others, but I do love this movie. I can't rate it below a 3.
Mm-hmm.
The next movie, though, which is part of the darker timeline, the Madman timeline, we'll call it, is not as much fun. I prefer, the more nuanced progression from villain to anti-villain to anti-hero to hero. The redescent from anti-hero into utter and total lunacy and evil.
It's something I don't like. Written.
You? Really? Not
exactly. I've seen it before. It's a writer or a creator disrespectful to the character. You develop a character to a certain point, and then you want to rewind?
Yeah, I agree. You can't just go back in the past.
It's
By this point...
I know there's some people that do relapse and do need a bit more work, but...
And I don't mind the odd villain who tries out being a hero then returns to evil. Look at Captain Cold from DC Comics. He was a hero at one point. He relapsed, but it was done very organically.
Yes.
And honestly, he should never have been redeemed.
Yeah,
but then
this here, it was just meant to milk the franchise.
Yeah, that's the problem. But people might argue, well, the 3 movies after the first one were meant to milk it. Yeah. But they were still writing a consistent story, ongoing story. Now it just goes...
This should have finished at Frankenstein created woman.
Yeah. So if you like this video, like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. And tell us what you think of the redemption timeline. And the possible ending of the 2 old men having to seek out the other Hans in order to live with him. Probably in some unknown part of Germany or Eastern Europe, where they live out the rest of their days as essentially local doctors, taking care of and seeing to essentially their grandchildren, Hans's children. Tell us what you think of that. Or maybe even in England or Edinburgh, where Hans once studied. That'd be funny. If not, if you prefer the Madman timeline, why? Honestly, I'd be curious to know. I think Dan would as well. So, yeah, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell.